Hello and welcome to Profiles in Risk. This is your host, Tony Cañas, switching to my radio voice. And today I have with me Jim Schubert, CEO at Southern States Insurance and fellow podcast host at Agents Growth Academy. So first of all, Jim, thank you for joining me today. How's it going?
It's going great, my friend. How are you? It's
I
a,
am
it's a lot
doing
cooler where I am than where you are.
I am doing fantastic. So basically, Jim and I are both Atlanta based.
Yep.
But as an Atlanta native, he's a lot smarter, and he spends the summers in New England, where his wife is from.
Yep.
Which is a smart thing to do, where Atlanta has been like 95 for a month straight, and you guys are at 75 degrees in a warm day, right? Uh,
Yep.
so for the listeners, so Jim runs his own podcast. I've been on it,
Yep.
and that podcast helps other agents grow. Uh, and he's also a photographer and actually teaches landscape photography in Atlanta. Uh, but you really are a bit of a unique guest for this particular podcast in a couple of ways that I think are important for people to know. Number one, uh, you are a traditional agency principal. It's very rare that, because our focus is really insurtech and a lot of carrier stuff. So
Mhm.
it's very rare for us to bring a agency principal on the show. And number two, uh, you guys are my clients on the recruiting side.
Yep.
uh Normally it goes the other way. Like very often I interview the insurtech, and then they end up becoming clients later. I think this might be the first time that with an agent, it definitely is the first time that like we've been working with you guys on that side, and then I bring in the podcast. And basically the reason that I wanted Jim on the podcast is because your agency, Southern States Insurance, is the exact opposite of the what a nationwide we used to call ROTJ agents, retired on the job. Right, whether that is first or second generations agents, but basically the ones who are just kind of writing a book as it slowly declines,
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
and then selling it off at the end. And like, carriers hate to work with them. Their employees hate to work with them. Like, they're hard to recruit for. You guys are the exact opposite. So let's start with the history. What is the history of SSI, or Southern States Insurance?
Yeah. And thanks for having me on, man. This is awesome. And I miss you, buddy. It's been a while since I saw you in person, but it's good to see you here, even though I'm not in Atlanta. Yeah, so the history of the agency, my father, who was a broker, he was on the broker side with Caroon and Black. They got bought by Willis in the 80s. And he just, long story short, got sick of reporting back to London once Willis bought them. So they had taught him how to do acquisitions. He was the president for the Atlanta office, and he'd saved up a bunch of money, kind of created a business plan, had it in his back pocket, and had talked to some carriers and said, "Hey, if I go out on my own, try to buy some agencies, would you support that? Would it be more likely that I could get a contract with you?" And back in the day, oh yeah, of course. So he did it, and for the first 15 years of the agency's life, he started it back in 1992. For the first 15 years of our life, of the agency's life, he was making acquisitions, like small little agencies in certain, very specific towns. He had a map in our basement of Metro Atlanta, and I'll never forget. He showed me one day. He put a dot in this town called Douglasville, and that was the first office, around Douglasville area, west of the city. And he said, I didn't know what the heck he was talking about. I think I was in middle, almost high school. And he said, this is going to be our service center. And then he put a bunch of other dots, and he's like, those are going to be our satellite revenue generators. I was like, okay, whatever that is. But as time went on, it actually happened. I mean, he always told me, plan your work and work your plan. and he did it. I mean, he had planned what he wanted to do, said it out loud, and damn if it didn't happen. I mean, it came to life. We probably made in those 15 years or so about as many acquisitions. And I came on board in August of 2001, 1 month before the world completely changed. And
And hold on. Was this your first job out of college?
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
So in a sense, so I did my undergrad at Boston College, and in higher, or sorry, in secondary English and education. So I was student teaching in Boston,
Uh,
and I had these visions of like Robin Williams with the kids standing on top of the desk chanting "Oh Captain, my Captain," and it just didn't come to
uh,
fruition.
for any younger listeners, that is the Dead Poet Society, a
Yes.
fantastic movie. I'm guessing from the late 80s.
Late
Uh,
80s, early 90s.
if you
Yeah.
have not watched Dead Poet Society, go watch it. Anyway,
Yeah,
continue.
fantastic. Yeah, yeah. So that didn't turn out the way I thought it was. It was more kids like in their Boston accents, like, "Oh, Mr. Schubert, I didn't do my homework again." I was like, "Oh, okay." So I just, I went on and I did a fifth year master's program. So I was crazy enough to take half of my master's courses at night in my senior year of college, undergrad, and then
Oh
I
wow.
finished up the following year. And I was going to work in a university because I started studying higher education administration. So had a job offer actually lined up to run the student center at Dartmouth in New Hampshire, which would have been super cool.
No kidding.
But
Ivy League school.
yeah, so my dad, literally the night before graduation, I was in my parents' hotel room in Boston. My dad was like, "You don't really seem that excited about what you're gonna go do." I was like, I don't know. I was dating my now wife, Megan. And I was like, well, I don't know if either of us want to be in the dead of winter in the middle of nowhere in New Hampshire for the rest of our lives. So, we're kind of reevaluating options. He said, why don't you come work in the insurance agency with me? And as a true Southern gentleman, I had the utmost respect for my father. And in the blink of an eye, forgetting all that, I said, "Oh hell no!" And then I was like, "Oh, I'm sorry, sir."
That's the most southern thing yet you've said. That's really funny.
Right.
Uh,
So then, long story short, he looked at me and said, "Son, you got into education because you valued relationships, you valued developing people and leading people, albeit younger people." And I said, "Yeah, that is why." He said, "That's what this is about. It's not just a desk job. It's not just pushing paper. It's not, you saw me building the business and it was stressful. It was hard, but there's a huge opportunity for you." And I said, "All right, well, I'll give it a shot. And if it doesn't work out after a year, then no hard feelings." He said, "Yeah, works for me." So I'm celebrating 23 years next month in the
so
agency.
so I look at your LinkedIn. I love how you have it actually broken down into all the jobs, right? So
I know, I'm such
personal
a
lines
dork.
agent for a year, commercial lines marketing for 6 months, commercial lines
Yep.
producer. Uh, at that point, you've got 4.5 years, and at that point, I'm guessing your dad's starting to look at exiting,
Yeah.
retiring or whatever, and so
Yep.
so you take the COO, EVP, COO, president, and finally you fully take the reins
Yeah.
in 2016.
Yeah.
And a few things. Teachers make great agents. Great agents. So even though you never worked as a teacher, you had the heart of a teacher and then the education of a teacher. It makes perfect sense that you'll be successful as an agent. And number two, this I don't think I had heard the story about your dad's plans for the agency as you were growing up,
Yeah.
but those make it very clear that it you never had the option of once he retired, you never had you never had the option to just like write the book as it slowly declines, right? Like he very much had shown you doing things right and growing the thing.
Yeah.
I'm guessing that what you did bring to it is you modernized it.
Yes, and I do want to back up and say too that another unique thing, not just about me being on this show as a principal, but I'm realizing it now about my father too. He wrote in those, he was with the company for about 20 plus years, with the agency that he formed, but he may have had one or two accounts at most the entire time. Now, one of them was a really large account, which we still have. And he did, I'm glad that you kind of read out the progression, because this is, I think, unique in itself. I'm glad that my father did it. He had me start, I don't want to say at the bottom, because every position I think is valuable, but he had me run through a bunch of different positions to understand. He knew exactly what he was doing, by the way. He had one shot. I'm an only child. So he ran me through all of these different positions, to make it so that if I did end up taking over one day, I would, number one, hopefully have developed the respect of my colleagues, because he didn't just, daddy didn't just give it to his son.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and number two, I really did get a better understanding of how an agency operates. Now, I was writing commercial business for a few years, but this is what I'm leading to, is another unique thing. And I realize as I'm talking to a lot of other agency principals, I'm I'm in a I'm in a unique position where I haven't written a lick of insurance in about 8 years. This is, and I say that just to help people understand that, like, I'm not your typical insurance agency owner. We have about 40 people in the organization now. We're spread out among, whereas 2 years ago, even, we had maybe one or two people working in a different state, and only because they used to work in Atlanta, but then their spouse moved, so they moved. But now we have people in 10 different states. So,
What one so so so
but I didn't
you
answer your question about modernizing. I can get to that though. But go ahead.
let's pause that for a second.
Yeah,
Your dad's wisdom on
yeah,
having you go through the different roles. Absolutely, that has to be a difference maker. I have seen so many agents who inherit the book and then have no idea how to manage it. And I think the biggest struggle, like retaining, especially if it's a commercial lines book, retaining the book is not that hard, especially if that built a great service team. I
yeah,
think the hardest part is growing the book, and the second hardest part, or it could be the hardest, is the people, is understanding what all those roles do and having that respect for all those roles do. My girlfriend, who's sitting right over here, and going like, "Oh, please don't mention me," uh, 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 was an account executive in California for a national shop that
yeah,
I won't name, and basically, uh, she got like an 80% raise to take the job, and she quit a year and 2 months later with no job in hand because she hated the producer she was working with. And
yeah,
and he was the perfect example of inherited the book from daddy, and he
yeah,
did not have the respect for the employees, did not understand what he was doing, and
yeah.
probably the worst of it, uh did like just had no idea how to run the agency, because he had not gone through all those different seats. So I think that was very wise on that part. So yeah, modernizing.
Yeah. Well, and right before modernizing, I just want to touch back on something you said about the people being hard. He always said, son, the insurance part's easy. It's the people part that's the hardest part. And God bless you for the industry you're in, my friend, because number one, you're helping us tremendously. But You see it all, and I know
Uh,
that it's
the
crazy.
yes, the people side is hard.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Um, as a recruiter, and all we do is insurance. Uh, it's it's a very interesting role. Now, the where third party recruiters sit in the insurance industry is really interesting because we don't do entry level.
yeah,
Because nobody's willing to pay us 25% of base salary for somebody who doesn't yet speak insurance, right? They
yeah,
can find that on their own. So the good news is that for the most part we're recruiting true professionals, uh, but yes, it is a very tricky side of the industry. Now, the main thing I want to chat about is
yeah.
how you guys hire, but
Okay,
I because it's so different
yeah,
and it works so well in
yeah,
yeah, it works so well. So, but before you got around to bringing me on and helping you hire in 10 different states, by the time I came around, like post COVID, the agency was ready for
yeah.
that kind of employment, for people in all those states, that the systems were like down pat,
Yeah.
both technology and process.
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that. So yeah, I mean, a lot of the modernizing that we did was around the hiring process, and a lot of it came out of COVID in recent years. I mean, sure, I could go back and talk about technology modernization that we've had in the last 20 years, but that's boring. I don't think anybody wants to really hear about our VoIP, phones that we switched 2 years ago. But yeah, COVID, just like everybody, obviously, as we started to emerge, we were faced with the decision of what do we do? Do we bring people back? Do we let them work from home? Do we let it be their decision? Do we sort of let it be their, and very early on, unlike I think a lot of our peers, we were very attuned to, you know what, we've got something here. This is it. I think a lot of people saw it as a challenge, and it was, right, to figure out, okay, now you have a bunch of people who are used to working from home. Some of them like it, some of them don't. Some of them probably won't even come back if you tell them they're going to have to come back into the office. So we knew, as much as dad said the people part's the hardest part, yes, but also yes. And what I mean is that it's going to be really hard if you do something to drive a bunch of people away. So we as a leadership team decided we are going to we're going to ask everybody to raise their hand and basically say, do you want to work full-time remote? Do you want to work part-time remote? What would you like to do? And we asked a couple of different ways in a survey, got the survey back. I presented it to my team the next week. I was like, folks, there's a lot of people who like what they're doing from home. And we got a decision to make. And ultimately we took the plunge and decided, okay, now COVID sent us home with roughly 40 people, one of which at that time, one or two were on Go to My PC. So from a technology standpoint, thank God we had experience with that already. And so we just like very quickly put everybody on that. I mean, I'll never forget, we were down in Mexico with our producers, some of our producers. We do an annual incentive trip for our producers. And that was when the world started shutting down in March of 2020. And we were in Mexico, and we were one of the last flights to get back to Hartsfield from abroad, and they let us back in, thank God. But the next day, everything changed. So uh, as we started to emerge, and we said, okay, we have the technology, we just need to put as many people on it or we already had people on it. Now we just had to say, okay, how are we going to hire from here on out? Because as time went on, and I mean, we're only talking 4 years, and how hard of a hiring market are um, our employers in right now. It's fantastic for employees, man. I mean, if you're not treating your employees well, boy, they can go find a remote job down the street, left, right, and center.
Especially
Is
in insurance.
Yeah, especially in insurance, man, everywhere, anywhere. So we focused a lot on culture. And at the same time, we were rolling out EOS. So for folks that don't know, the
Mm.
book Traction by Gino Wickman, he teaches what's called the entrepreneurial operating system, and it's essentially like the best of all the best business books you've ever read, but instead of theory, you literally put it into practice to help you run your organization. Just like your computer has an operating system, this is the entrepreneur's operating
Mhm.
system. So we were really focused on culture. That was one thing that helped us really focus on the hiring process. So it's interesting because you, I'm sure, have been told by our HR manager recently, or somebody in your organization has been told at least, that we've recently updated it even more. But
All the time. like
yeah,
like every
exactly.
couple of months.
I tell you, it's one thing that we take seriously. We know, again, with people being the most important
Mhm.
thing, we have to focus on that. So we created a hiring process that revolved partly around our core values. So the questions we ask have a lot to do with they're pointed back to our 5 core values in our agency. There, we also have, like, it was a 3-part interview process, which recently we totally revamped because we realized we were losing candidates in the process because so many people now offer remote that they're like, why am I, 3 weeks, a month into an interview process on a third interview when I've got like 5 other offers? So we were
Uh,
like, okay, Mayday, we've got to switch it up.
uh-huh.
Yeah, but at the beginning, it was a process whereby it was a very quick um, phone screen where we asked some kind of qualifying questions, as you might imagine, and then we would do a main interview, and then we would also do what a lot of people don't do is what we call the technical interview. And we've now since combined these into like essentially 1 or 1.5 interviews. But the technical interview, what a lot of our competitors, I think, are not focused on is how many times, if you're listening to this and you're watching this and you're an agent or an agency owner, and uh, you hire somebody, they say all the right things about what they do. They got it on paper. They make you believe, man, they know applied systems if that's what you run on inside and out. They know insurance like it's nobody's business. And then you get them in and they barely know how to spell insurance. They can't issue a certificate to save their lives and act like they'd never seen, your agency management system. So what we started to do in this technical interview was literally test people on, okay, you say you know this. Here's a bunch of things that we're gonna like that you would need to do on a daily basis. We'll pick 2 or 3. And we'll give you some very brief instruction on it, both verbal and written. You can have the written in front of you, and then we'll just sit back and we'll watch you do it. And I can't tell you how many times people weed themselves out saying they can do it, and then they prove to you that they can, that they cannot. So we got to the point now where we've reordered some things in the interview process so that we're not wasting their time, we're not wasting our time. But yeah, I don't know if there was anything specific that
No,
you
no,
were looking for
yes,
out
yeah, fantastic.
of.
We are also an EOS shop. It's
That's
interesting.
right.
I had not made the connection that you guys
Okay.
use EOS.
Yeah.
So from our perspective as a third party recruiter, uh, when we first engaged with you guys, uh, and you walked us through the process, we were like, "Oh my god, what did we get ourselves into?" And funnily enough, at that time, our biggest client was another Atlanta-based remote insurance, in this case, InsurTech organization that hires a lot of account managers.
Yeah.
And they were very, very, very easy to recruit for. Basically, like 2 years of account management experience in commercial lines, and like right salary range, one interview and offer.
Yeah.
And we were used to working with them, having a lot of success with them. And then we brought you guys on, and yeah, the process has gotten better, but it was a beast. Okay.
Yeah.
So I remember, like, I don't know, it took us maybe like 4 months to finally have success, to finally have somebody get all the way to getting the offering and starting. And since then we've continued growing with you guys. We've helped you hire multiple people. Looking back on it, yesterday, we're recording on July 12th. July 11th was my 2-year anniversary of starting this practice with Kylie. Thank you. And you guys came in not long after that, so we've been hiring
Yeah.
for you for like a year and a half now. And like, basically, the other Atlanta based the other organization uh has had a lot of people hired and a lot of people not last.
Yeah.
And you guys, as much as the process has been a bit of a beast, and I'm glad you guys are improving it, but I can honestly tell when I'm recruiting for you guys, I can honestly tell candidates it, it's hard to get into SSI, but if you get in, you're probably going to work out, right?
Yeah.
Like, I don't think we've lost a single account manager with you guys, right? Like,
Yeah.
getting so it works
Yeah.
it's yeah, it's I'm glad that you are improving the margins. I'm glad that you're tweaking it to lose less candidates during the
Yeah.
process.
Well,
And
we're able to vet a lot more candidates faster now
but
through the new process.
but I've got to say, the process works amazingly well, which is the main
Yeah.
reason I wanted you on the show,
Yeah.
because I don't know any other agency, I don't know any other insurance organization at all, carrier, broker, or insurtech, that has figured out remotely how to make sure we have culture fit,
Yeah.
actual technical skills,
Yep.
like actually, like, I'm gonna let you drive and show me how you do it,
Yeah.
uh and that the people, once they get in, they don't leave. So it's working beautifully. uh
Yeah. Well,
and
thank
and
you.
so much so that you guys just got recognized by Rough Notes, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay,
So,
so
couple months ago.
what I saw the article. I saw the wood frame. I have
Yeah.
one for my article on
Yeah.
Rough Notes. They really do a good job with that. What was the main reason that Rough Notes chose to have you guys on the cover?
Um, I think I think it was a couple things. Number one, it was kind of like a just a good family story. Obviously, there's a lot of second generation agency owners, but one of my right hand person is somebody that I've known since we were 3 years old, and he's like family to both my father when he was still at the agency, and obviously to me. So that was one reason, but another reason was because of the our ability to thrive as an agency who now has 70% of our workforce working full-time remote. Yeah.
And yes, yeah, 70% remote agency. If you're not an insurtech, like if you're an actual agency, especially a family second generation agency,
Yeah.
almost unheard of. I think I
We
know one other example. They're a lot smaller than you guys.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we look vastly different than we did even 2 or 3 years ago, as you can hear, but it's worked out well. And it's not to say that it's all like roses and rainbows all the time. I mean, it is definitely a challenge creating that sense of belonging and the true culture that you feel when you're in person with people in such a remote environment. But at the same time, there's some real beauties to it. I'll give you an example. One of our producers um, he's originally from Jamaica, and he lives in Florida now, has lived there for a few years. And he went back to Jamaica um, for about a month. And they just had this hurricane come through, like right before we're recording this. He actually ended up he was not able to get a flight out, so he had to hunker down. And thank goodness he was in a safe location, high up on a hill on a concrete structure. But before that though, I do I do regular check-ins with some of the producers, especially the newer ones, just to continue that sense of culture and especially like coming from the top, coming from the person who's supposed to exude the most culture in the organization. And I really enjoy these two guys right now that I've been checking in with, about every week or so. But our producer that was down in Jamaica visiting some family was able to work for an entire month down there. He's actually planning, he got engaged on our last producer incentive trip down in Dominican Republic. And he so he was down there planning the wedding. But it was really cool because, at first I didn't even notice. And I don't know that I knew that he actually went down to Jamaica. I had heard that he was going to, and then all of a sudden he said something that just I was like, that doesn't sound like Florida. And he was like, oh no, I'm back home in Jamaica. I was like, wait, what? He's like, yeah, I've been working here for a couple weeks. It's great. Like literally 2 days before the hurricane came, I said, hey man, we're praying for you. We're here for you. What can we do from here to help you? He's like, I'm good. I'm safe. Um, I thanks for the offer for help. I actually just bound two really big accounts. I was like, what? From Jamaica? So it's stories like that that I just love that we're able to have that kind of culture. Another quick story too. We've got an account manager who lives in Virginia, and he's never met anybody in person from our company, but he is probably one of our biggest cheerleaders for the agency. And I don't know, part of it is his specific team that he works with. They just love each other to death. And he actually had to go into the hospital today. He's having surgery today. Um, and kind of some somewhat emergency surgery. He was in a lot of pain a couple of days ago, but without even sending an email, when my team let me know, and they said, I always ask people like, we're like, I don't mind. This is one thing I love about being a private organization, as I can say, would you like me to send out a prayer request and not, have to go through compliance to do that? So my team knows that. And when the head of account services came to me and said, this person's out and here's why, before I even asked, she said, or before I even asked if it was okay to send a prayer request, she said he said it's okay to go ahead and send a prayer request, and we've already had about 2 or 3 people who know what he's going through and know that he's probably going to be out for a little while, who have volunteered to donate their PTO to him. And I was just like, man, we're doing something right. But there it goes back to the culture and hiring people based on your core values. One of our core values is passionate advocate for others. And I can't think of a more, potent example of that core value than stories like that. So if you hire with your core values in mind, you're going to win every time. You're going to have the tenure that you were talking about before, which, by the way, last time I checked, our average tenure, even when you include the newest of the new hires across all of our 40 employees, is about 8 to 9 years.
Fantastic.
I don't
Yeah.
know a lot of people that have that.
Culture, 1,000%. I want to say starts at hiring, but it starts before that. Before then, you have to define who you are,
Yeah.
right? And do the values work and the mission work, and you might need a consultant to help you through that process.
Yeah.
And then once you have full alignment with the leadership team on what our values, our mission, etc., are, then you need to hire to that 100% of the time.
Yeah.
Right? Like you cannot make exceptions
Yeah.
on culture.
Yeah.
especially if you're not, 10,000 people. Like if you're less than 100 people, you cannot be like a single bad apple
Yeah.
will significantly damage the culture.
Oh yeah, man.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
that is fantastic.
Yeah.
So before COVID, the agency was, if I remember correctly, 4 offices around Metro Atlanta, kind of thing, right?
Yep.
Do you still have 4 physical locations?
I think we have three now. One, two, yeah, three.
Okay.
Yeah,
Uh,
because we had two in there where when we asked everybody to raise their hand, an entire office said they wanted to work full-time remote. And it just so happened that their lease was coming up in a few months. So we were like, okay,
everything
well,
everything
that
lined
takes
up.
care of that. And then someone else recently, this is another part of our culture is that like you alluded to people kind of writing their book down slowly. Um, Part of the way that we try to get ahead of that is we offer something we call a tail out program, which means that if you have a certain amount of revenue in your book as a producer, and you've been here for at least 10 years, like that tells us you're dedicated. We believe it, we know it, and we want to reward you for that. So we basically let them, instead of writing that book down, when they're ready to retire, they know that they can retire and the next day starts the clock for 3 years. Well, there's where they will still get paid 50% of the commission they were earning
Ah,
for 3 years without having to do anything. It's just a way of saying thank you, essentially. I mean, it's somewhat of an equity play, but not quite. And that basically starts that helps that prevents people from just not caring as much. When they're ready, they're ready, and then we transfer
mm,
that book to another producer or multiple people, and that person will also get paid 50% of what the other producer used to make as a, incentive to maintain it. And then at the end of 3 years, if the retention is at a certain level, the producer that retired can get a one-time bonus, basically, is another way of saying, hey, thanks for helping out to, help the producer retain those accounts during the time that you were gone. So
so it sounds like a very well thought out way to avoid 80-year-old producers that won't retire because it's too profitable not to, right? Because
yeah,
like,
yeah,
and that book is seeing slight declines each year,
yeah,
uh and but they have no incentive to go ahead and retire.
right.
uh that is fantastic. How did you figure out how did you figure out that to do it that way?
I don't know where we got the seed idea for that, but I will give the vast majority of the credit to my COO, John Hall. He was very instrumental in trying to figure, like, he loves solving problems. He was a logistics officer in the military in Iraq back in the early 2000s. So he came out a captain, and I couldn't have a better logistics person running our operations. But he was just, yeah, he's trying to solve a problem. He's like, I don't know, what do we do about these people that are just like sitting there doing nothing? But you can tell that they want to retire. Like literally, some people are falling asleep at their desk, and we're trying to figure out how to prevent that. And so it was like, well, why not give them what they want? Let them just retire, but we'll still reward them for it, for being here for so long. So yeah, I don't know.
Perfect, perfect. um so what is Agents Growth Academy, and why? Like, so you've got a successful agency, keeps you
Yeah.
busy enough to run it. Why help your competitors? How did it come to be, and what is Agents Growth Academy?
Yeah. Why help my competitors? Because enough of them have helped me over the years. And it's my way of paying that back and paying it forward, I guess, in a sense. Plus, as I alluded to before, I didn't really get the chance to be that teacher I wanted to. And so this scratches that itch to be,
I,
in the classroom, so to
I,
speak.
I love that you call yourself the headmaster at the Agents Growth Academy.
Yeah. Yeah, and I have to tell you, that has been one of the most rewarding things that I have attempted in the last couple of years. 'Cause it's a couple of years old. I think right now we have like only 98 episodes out, but I've got about 6 that I've recorded that I need to
Yep.
get released.
98 episodes. Okay. Only 98 episodes doesn't
Yeah.
go together. Yeah. Yes. Profiles in Risk is in episode 570 something.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
But the average podcast, the great majority of podcasts don't make it to episode 15.
Yeah.
Episode 98 is a big deal. And I hope you have a big party that you're throwing for episode 100.
Yeah, well, I got a great guest, and it's probably the guest that's helped me the most over the years, from a mentorship standpoint, from being a fellow agency principal. So I'll just tease it out like that. But yeah, it's just been a lot of fun for me. One of the biggest things that I've gotten back from it is the relationships, like you and me and others that I've met through interviewing people. Um, the same value that my dad talked about when I first was making a decision to come in, it's been amplified 1,000 times by doing these podcasts and interviewing people and really getting to know people on a deeper level. So yeah, it's been a blast. And I specifically love anything that revolves around like captivating your audience, like you being like a professional magician. I mean, that's captivating, man. Like captivating your audience, communicating with your audience, um, you know, those kind of things. I love, look at this. He's always an entertainer, man. God, I looked up for a second and I thought you were on fire.
Always on fire on this show. So 2 years of running the podcast, and that's basically a hobby to help the rest of the agency space.
Yeah, it is. And if I'm being honest, like sometimes it is a distraction from what I'm doing in the agency. And I did take a little bit of a hiatus because I needed to focus on the agency. And it was in a time where we were really struggling to figure out that hiring process. And I, fortunately, it's not like my main job. So and nobody, I mean, at the end of the day, like nobody cares if you stop your podcast for a little while. You may think it's going to be the end of the world, but it really isn't. You pick it back up and people listen, and
1,000%. Yeah,
yeah,
especially I think we're both in the same spot where we don't have like sponsors to feed kind of thing. We don't right. Like we've had a
sure,
sponsor every once in a while, but
yeah,
we've never had like I've never had to record an episode because I need an episode
yeah,
for this sponsorship, because we promised them X number of episodes and we haven't done them.
yeah. I'm not beholden to anyone. Yeah,
Exactly.
totally.
So
Yeah.
yeah, nobody notices. Absolutely, 1,000%.
But yeah, it's been a blast doing that. But more than that, just the relationships that I built have been just absolutely tremendous.
Fantastic, Jim. It's been a ton of fun.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing some details on the uh, ridiculously in-depth hiring process that works ridiculously well, and especially the thinking behind it, how you guys thought through the hiring process. And I love the fact that you shared that you're basically always refining it,
Yeah.
right, and always looking
Oh
at
yeah.
what's working, what's not. Okay, so the market's too hot for talent right now. We need to keep the key things that we learn from it,
Yeah.
without keep the key underwriting questions
Yep.
that
Yeah.
prevent bad hires,
Yeah.
but minimize the parts that prevent good hires, or
Yeah.
that make us lose good hires along the way. uh,
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for your time today,
My
and yeah,
pleasure.
looking forward to continue doing what we do in the industry on both sides.
Absolutely, my friend. And for anybody that's not watching this on YouTube or wherever you're having it as a video, if you're only listening to this in audio, you need to go watch it just so you can see Tony's shirt. For no other reason than to see his shirt. Yeah,
Oh,
please.
and okay, so for yes, the shirt is a bunch of playing cards with for the magician. But the funny part is it's it's a dry fit because I skate on the Beltline every day.
Mm,
And it's horribly hot in Atlanta. Finally, last weekend, my 4th of July weekend, my girlfriend's sisters were visiting, and one of them is like an ultra marathon runner,
yeah.
and she's like, "You're a moron. It's 95 degrees outside. Like you need some decent workout clothes. You can't just like wear normal t-shirts." And I'm like, "But they're so boring looking." So my girlfriend found this one, which is a perfect for the magician thing, while still being dry fit. So
Love
it's
it.
probably my favorite new shirt. So yes, thank you for noticing the shirt.
I noticed it the whole time. It was hard not to notice it.
And I've worn it for every meeting today, not just for the recording. Awesome, Jim. Thank you so much.
Yes, sir, my friend.